We'll just start with a few minutes quiet reflection meditation. And so I'm going to just gong once to bring us into a more quieter state. So before I do that, just to explain short time, EJ will then bring us into a meditation on the divine name. So it'll be just after a very short time of silence, and then we immediately go into your meditation. Each lead us into that. So maybe if we could take a few deep breaths. And perhaps just move from the head to the heart, letting go as much as possible of all the thoughts and worries that are happening in our lives. And as we go into this silence and then into EJ's meditation, maybe we could just join worldwide, with all the people who are entering to prayer, entering into sending energy of healing and light and peace for this present situation.
and welcome to those who have joined us. Celia, could you perhaps just shortly give us more information about Mystic Matters and what it's all about for those who might not know?
Oh, okay. Well, Mystic Matters started 7 years ago with 3 of us who had been at Sadiba, which is an interspiritual center in Mouton. And three of us got together and said, well, not everybody can get up to Mouton for the meditation and silence and celebration of the Eucharist. So we had been talking about mysticism. We'd had some presentations on mysticism at Sadiba. But so we came back down from the mountain back to Pretoria, and the 3 of us sat together and prayed and started a little group. It took a while to find a name. In fact, I think Francis, you're in the corner. I think it was Francis who suggested Mystic Matters. I think so. Is that right, Francis? Can't hear you, but...
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
It was Jean.
It was Jean. I don't know if Jean is with us. She has got the note. I thought, yes, there was some discussion between you and Jean and the group, so we decided on Mystic Matters. So for 7 years, we meet once a month, and we started off looking at the mystics, Christian mystics, and then mystics of all the different traditions.
Just want to say that, I want to dedicate this presentation to my grandmother who passed away last year. Her name was Isabel Morkel, and she was someone who really believed in the divine name and the importance of the divine name, and somebody for me who lived up to the ideals of our Creator. And there's something that really struck me in Jonathan Goldman's book. This is a quote from the Bible where God says, "This shall be my name forever. This is my appellation for all eternity." And really what Jonathan Goldman is trying to do, and what I'm trying to do in my own small way, is to contribute to reviving the divine name and the power of the divine name, lest it be forgotten. So just very briefly, our topics for today is we will look at the divine name and how that is embedded in our DNA. And then I will do a bit of a recap on Tricia's talk of about 2 weeks ago, and how that all links up with what we are discussing today. And then I will really get down in talking about the divine name and the discoveries that Jonathan Goldman made. Celia, can you still hear me? Fine?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Right. So I'm going to give us all a very brief crash course in the Hebrew alphabet. For all of us that might not know, the Hebrew language consists of consonants, and they didn't really use vowels at the time. And, as we go along, you will see how that, links to what we are discussing, and, why that is important to know. So really people, for example, we might have the word bed, and that would be, B-E-D. But if we only had consonants, it would be the word B-D. But that could really mean bed, it could mean bad, it could mean anything, but it's really the context, that would determine the meaning of the word. And then there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And, it's quite powerful from what I've discovered, is that, they also assign like a numerical value to the alphabet, and that you can really find in Greek as well. And that is called the science of gematria. And that is really saying that the language has got an outer obvious meaning as well as a hidden inner meaning. So just to give you an example, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph, that is associated with the number 1. The second letter, Bet, with the number 2, and so it goes on until we get to Yod, where basically it repeats itself and then it becomes 10. And so the sequence go all the way until the last letter, Tav, which has got the value of 400. So in the next screen, you will see, there we go. You will see just an example of what the Hebrew alphabet looks like and all the different values. And as we go along, you will see why that is important to note that aspect. Now, just to give you some examples of, this interplay between the outer meaning and, the inner meaning of words in the Hebrew alphabet. The Hebrew word for soul is neshama, which is written as the vowels N, Sh, M, H. And assigning the number codes described in, what I've been mentioning in that example, the values becomes 395. As you can see on the screen, the value for the N is 50, for the Sh, 300, for the M, 40, and for the H, 5. So therefore, in terms of the meaning of, in terms of numeric terms, 395 is the value of the soul. And then it really gets very interesting, because there's another Hebrew word which denotes heaven, which is ha-shamayim. And if you count up the values, it's also 395. And I just thought I would share that with you, just to show that, there's so much going on, on a mystical level. So, that will also help us to understand how the divine name is encoded in our DNA. So, as people who are interested in mysticism, we are aware of the fact that there are many names of God in the many different religious traditions. So, for example, in Hinduism, we talk about Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the protector, and Shiva, the destroyer. And with many of these different names, what we get is it's more descriptive. It more talks about an aspect of God. But in the Hebrew and Christian tradition, there are at least 2 instances when God is said to have revealed him or herself quite clearly by one very personal name. And of course, I'm now talking about, the incident where Moses saw, the burning bush. And when facing the burning bush, Moses asked who he should tell the people he has spoken to. And then we get the reply of God. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I am that I am. Now, if we really drill down into that passage, we see that God revealed God's personal name to Moses, and not just an aspect of himself. When he said Ehyeh asher ehyeh, he was, demonstrating, that you can also translate it with I will be who I will be. So I'm just going to read here for us. Moses then said to God, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What am I to tell them? God said to Moses, I am he who is. And he said, this is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God further said to Moses, you are to tell the Israelites, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abram, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. And quite important to note this. This is my name for all time, and thus I'm to be invoked for all generations to come. So I just want to, come to a bit of biology. And as you probably know, it's about 20 years ago, they finally managed to decode the human genome. And as you can see on the screen below, there's also a code in our molecules. That starts with G, A, T, C, A, T, and so it goes on. And that really speaks to certain molecules. And, they are known as adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And all of these make up our chromosomes. So, by the way, that code, is only of the human chromosome 1. So really the key to translating the code of DNA into a meaningful language is to then apply the discovery that converts element to letters. So really what I'm saying here is what this gentleman, Gregg Braden, has done, is that he has matched the values of all these elements of our DNA to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So for example, hydrogen becomes the Hebrew letter Yod, nitrogen becomes the letter He, oxygen becomes the letter Vav, and carbon becomes Gimel. So I know at this stage it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but just bear with me, all shall be revealed. So, what he did is he went back to even what we call alchemy. And what he did is that he translated all the different elements to our modern understanding of the different elements. And so if you look at the figure that I've labeled as 4, we now go back to our periodic table that we all came to know about, in high school. So in my example, what he did is he used oxygen, and he used the atomic mass of oxygen, which is 15 if you don't round it up. And then what he did is, if we then go to the figure that I labeled, or the table that I labeled as number 3, what he then did is he applied the principles of numerology. So if we look at oxygen, for example, what he did is he used the number 15, but he broke it up. So it's 1 plus 5 gives us 6. And then if you remember the table that I showed with the different Hebrew alphabet and the numerical values, you will see that that corresponds with the letter Vav and its numerical value of 6. So for hydrogen, it's 1. And then what he did is he, that corresponds to Yod, which is 10 in the Hebrew alphabet, but he also reduced that number to a 1. With nitrogen, its atomic mass is 15. So what he did is 1 plus 4 is 5. And that gives us a reduced number of 5. And so he did the same with oxygen and carbon. The atomic mass there is 12. So what he did is he, 1 plus 2 is 3, and that corresponds with Gimel. So if we look at figure number 1, we will see that hydrogen is Yod, and nitrogen is hay, oxygen is vav, and carbon is gimel. Sorry, I'm just admitting one more person before I carry on. And so you will see that that pattern keeps on repeating itself in the different chemical elements that make up the human DNA, like thymine, cytosine, adenine, and guanine. But I really want you to also look at figure number 6. And you will see that the name of God, that the personal name of God is made up of the letters Yod, Hey, Vav, and Hey. And that corresponds to hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen again. But if you look at the right, we will see that there's a part of God's name that also comes up in our DNA, the Yod and the Hey and the Vav. However, there is a difference, and that is that we contain the element of carbon. And this is where it gets quite interesting. Sorry, that again. So if you look here, Yod Hey Vav Hey then becomes the name of God, and Yod Hey Vav Gimel becomes the name of man. So what Gregg says is that the Yod Hey part speaks to God or eternal. So one half of God's name is already encoded into our DNA, into our cells. And then if we look at the last part that speaks to Vav Gimel, the meaning for that is within the body. So if we put all of this together, a literal translation of our DNA brings about the following message: God eternal within the body. And, so I just want to recap a talk that Bishop Patricia, or Trish as we know her, did about the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father in Aramaic. And what she shared with us is that if you look at the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, the first 2 words is Abun Dibwashmawaya. And, that is really derived from, a couple of words. And the first word is Ab, from Abba, and Bun means ray or emanation from source or birthing. And then the U talks about the breath or spirit or wind that carries the flow. And it's a word that you pronounce like Abun. So the N, as the breath vibrates and moves, we can feel the vibration in our lips and our noses and our faces as we keep on saying the word Abun. So Abun means the father or mother or source. And then also contained in the word Ab, we've got father. In Bun, the birther or mother. So really the first word is mother, father. And then Shem, and I want to pause here because that is for me the connection between what we've just learned about the divine name, that it's encoded in our DNA. So Shem, has got different meanings. It can mean name, light, vibration, word, radiation, and resonance. And the Aya means the shining or vibration from the center, going out into the entire universe. So if we put all of this together, we can translate it as follows. O Father, Mother, or Divine Parent, source of all, your vibration, name, or light radiates throughout the cosmos. So I'm just going to play a short clip of where they actually sing this. Celia also shared with us another translation from the Prayers of the Cosmos, where it says, O birther, Father, Mother of the Cosmos, you create all that moves in light. O thou, the breathing life of all, creator of the shimmering sound that touches us. Okay, so in my presentation, I also have different links, which I will share as a PDF document. So I just want to reflect on what Trish said about the word Shem and the different meanings, namely light, name, vibration, word, radiation, and resonance. So when she said that, it made me think of the Divine Name by Jonathan Goldman, which we will look at just now. And he discovered that the translation of the Divine Name, Yod He Vav He, into English from Hebrew is the name that rusheth through the universe, or the sound that rusheth through the universe. And both versions can be found in various texts in Kabbalah and other Western mystical traditions. So he says that it's speculated that this name was the sound that actually created the universe. Yod He Vav He, or Yahweh, is said to be the secret vibratory code of creation. And for me, the link between what Trish taught us about the Lord's Prayer and, the work of Jonathan Goldman lies in the fact that the word Shem, and the two meanings of the word Shem, namely vibration and resonance. So for me, with the Lord's Prayer, if we invoke Hashem, or the divine name of God, we are saying that we want to achieve resonance between us and the Creator. We are saying, make me a resonating space for your vibrations. And then Trish also mentioned that the Aramaic word for to pray, shalu, means to open oneself to receive something from the Holy One, the source. And that for Jesus' prayer was not about asking for things, but rather, to meditate and to contemplate. And as we go along, if we look at the work of Jonathan Goldman, we will discover that the divine name is a universal sound of vibration that, when properly intoned, can bring us harmony and healing on a personal and planetary level. So, as with a lot of amazing discoveries in this world, it all started with a dream for Jonathan Goldman. And he says that in 1993, he attended the International Sound Colloquium in Epping. And he stayed at his friend's place, Sarah Benson, and he had this dream, and he says that he remembers the date so well, March 21, 1986. because what happened for him, oh no, sorry, I got that wrong. Before this dream of 1993, what he did is he had this meditation that took place on March 21, 1986. And, that date he remembers so well because he had been engaged in a powerful meditation. And in that meditation, he discovered that there are specific vowel sounds that resonate with the chakras. And we'll speak more about that a bit later on. And so to come back to his dream, so that night he had a dream, and he says he cannot exactly remember what happened in this dream, but after he woke up, he was told to write down the system of vowels that he had developed back in the 80s, and that he had to flip that around, the sequence, he had to flip that around. We normally start with the chakras from the lower chakras all the way up to the higher chakras. You had to go down from the higher chakras, the crown chakra, all the way down, to the lower chakras. And he decided to do that. And when he intoned the sounds that he used to resonate the chakras, he discovered, that the energy was going from the top of his head all the way down to the bottom of his spine, and then back up to and out of the top of his head. And he distinctly heard the name Yahweh in the elongated vowels that he intoned or sounded. And so he asked himself, now what was I to do with this information? And he says that, initially he decided to do nothing because he was so scared of misusing the divine name of God. And eventually he shared it with a couple of friends and family. Then he did workshops, and eventually, this CD in the book that I got about 10 years ago. And he also discovered that, quite by chance, he was attending a mystic fair, and there was this booth where they make videos of people's auras. And he was intoning the divine name of God, and, I'll show you a video of what happened to his aura. Okay, Surin, please go ahead.
Yeah, and it just sounds almost verbatim like what Vivekananda describes as his experience when he had a revelation on the sound patterns and intonations on the Vedic chantings that they used to do. And, since then, they've reverted to that, what was the ancient Vedic way of doing it, which was not the way they were doing it at the time. So it was just a kind of nice parallel that I saw in Goldman's experience. And obviously, if you look at mystics, there's, these nice parallels that they all have. But the other thing you spoke about was, when you paused the first time for questions, and you said that line about God in the body, it's so in sync with the standard Hindu view of God and the world. So we have something called the great Mahavakyas from the Vedas. There's one from each one. So it's kind of said to be what's in the Vedas. So from the Rig Veda, for example, there's one that goes Aham Brahmasmi, which means I am Brahman. There's one from the Atharva Veda that goes I am Atma Brahm, that means I am one with God. And there's one from each one, I can't remember all of them. One is Tatvamasi, which means I am that. So it's so nice to see that there's this this parallel, this commonality between different traditions. So this dualistic approach that we have in mainstream religions is really kind of misguided. It's nice to see this reversion to what it actually was meant to be.
Well, thanks for that.
That's my comment, thanks.
What he also mentions in the book, which I didn't mention, is that he also talks about, those different tonings that he uses for the chakras. And he also talks about mantras and how we can also see the divine name as a mantra.
Can I just say quickly,
while
I'm stuck in Poland, I'm reading this book, which is called The Second Coming of Christ.
Oh, wow.
A commentary on the Bible by a great saint named Paramahamsa Yogananda. Some of you might know the book.
I love Yogananda.
So it's a 2-volume work. It's brilliant. And it's so much in sync with what you're saying. And it really just kind of gives a very enlightened take on the whole biblical canon. So, yeah, a bit of advertising there. Thanks.
Yeah. So if you want to ask a question, please feel free to unmute yourself. I see, Celia, you also wanted to say something.
Sorry, I was just to let us know, Suren, you're coming back on Zoom with Yogananda soon, coming back with the 2 books, having read them from cover to cover.
I hope so, yes.
Which I know is a task. They're not, it's not a short read, but if everyone agrees with this, let's follow up with Suren and Yogananda Paramahansa, because it's so pertinent. And, coming from the Hindu background, as you do, that would be a welcome contribution. So can we get your commitment here and now?
Okay, some motivation to actually read it properly. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll also do that. I'm going to take it off my shelf now that you've mentioned it. Thank you. Thanks, Eugene. I just think that's a good possibility.
I wanted to know, I've always thought of pronouncing the divine name not as Yahweh, but as Yahweh. So what do you think is a closer approximation of the sound of the divine name?
Based on all the research that I've done, Yahweh is probably the closest. And the name of God is also contained in the phrase Hallelujah, for example.
So Yah would be the first part. Yes, that's nice. Yah.
But we're not
the way part.
I'm not quite sure where they got that. It might be very close to that phrase, Asher, that part where God says, I am who I am. But to be honest, we are not sure. And Jonathan Goldman says, that there's much more power in intoning the divine name than just speaking a name. And I think that is really what I'm taking away from it, that ultimately, for me, it's about our intention, and it's about the vibration. And if we can connect with that vibration, I think it's much more powerful than any, name that we might use or not use.
Can you intone it for us? How you would intone?
I'm not there yet.
Oh, okay.
Still learning, and that is why I actually want a lady called Vilna to come and assist us with that. She's really an expert on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome, Johan.
I say something.
Yeah, Trish.
Apart from intoning the divine name, it was often breathed or breathed. So they often said it, they didn't pronounce it, they said it as Yahweh, Yahweh, with a breath in each part. I just want to put that in.
It's beautiful. Thank you. So, Celia, anything from your side?
I wanted to echo what Barney had said. Perhaps it's something we can take up again later, maybe in another session, because I think it's got implications from the Christian tradition, the Christian mystical tradition. But now I've switched to the breath because of this discussion with you and Trish. And I guess many of you know about the talk that Richard Rohr gave on Yahweh as the breath, as the prayer of the breath. And he gave this to a group of people. And at the end of the talk, an Islamic scholar, Muslim scholar, came up to him and he was shaking. He was in tears. He said, I listened to your talk on Yahweh. And he said, but this is what we as Muslims, how we pray. Allah, Allah. But he said, I'm so moved by this. And he was actually shaking as he spoke to Richard Rohr. He said, here we are with the same prayer of the breath. And at the same time, here we are still fighting each other. And then Richard Rohr went on to speak about giving the same talk in Hawaii. And it was the breath. The ha in one of the languages in Hawaii was breath, but at the same time it was God. So ha was God. And he didn't realize this as he was talking in Hawaii, but when he spoke about the breath and ha, everybody just started clapping because it resonated so much with their understanding of the breath and the divine. So all these links coming together, it's actually quite amazing. I think it's the tip of the iceberg. Sorry, I'm going on too long.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, that is very rich and powerful. Thank you.
Just as a little anecdote, in our household, let me put it this way. As a sister in the convent, we were not encouraged to sort of sigh, because if you're sighing, you're not really accepting the present moment. They didn't put it like that. So I spent most of my life not sighing. And then my husband, who's just outside, so I guess he's going to hear this, he would sigh a lot around the house. So, ha, ha. But after we heard Richard Rohr's talk about the ha being the breath, and the sigh being the breath, and the breath being God and being united to God, we used to go around saying then, are you praying again? Instead of, are you sighing again? Because it's all linked to the breath. But on a less, anecdotal note, I really am fascinated by the fact that, well, Richard Rohr said, we start with the one breath when we come into the world, and our whole life is prayer. And the last breath is also prayer. So that's a whole nother topic of discussion, but it does make me seriously consider my breath much more than I used to. And certainly I do sigh now much more.
Yeah, what I also wanted to mention earlier is that, we've created a Facebook page for Holistic Matters. So if you want to join that, you're quite welcome. And then also a YouTube channel, if you, can subscribe to that and, also like our videos. We already have 2 videos on there. One that I recently made about the different ways in which we are connected. And then also the first part of Trisha's talk on the Lord's Prayer. And in 2 weeks' time, when she will come back to the rest, we will also post that video, and we will also post the video of today. And, I will also share the PDF, that I converted this PowerPoint to PDF. So yeah, I would like to take us in a final meditation, and then, you know, if anyone would still like to stay behind to chat, you're more than welcome to do that.
Thank you, EJ.
Thanks a lot.